Change is never enacted from the bottom up. Change is always enacted from the top down.
But if you're going to take that as writ, then it's a situation where it's the failure of the top down that causes the bottom up change, which I'm willing to agree to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
The failure of the top down. We're at the failure of the top down.
Yes, I agree. Do you agree? We are at the failure of the top down. We are ready for revolution.
We're ready.
Dude, I think that this is why we have populist uprisings. This is why we have the riots. This is why people are believing in Trump like a fucking religious figure. Because the only thing he has going for him is that he's not in the establishment, that we all can see is a gelled in thing that's a generational transfer of power.
Up to our noses in a mysterious white powder. This is the New World Order now, coming to you live from the end of the world.
That's correct. This is the New World Order broadcast. We are coming to you live from the end of the world, and I am your host, the Hatman. I am joined today by Harry. Hello, Harry. And we are joined remotely by Talking Head number 5, who is coming to us from an undisclosed location because a severe weather event has kept him from traveling to the bunker. How are you doing over there, Talking Head number 5?
I'm hanging in there. It's been a little grim, but working through it.
All right. So you are working through the issues of being snowed into wherever you are, and you're doing well?
No, yeah, I'm like I said, just hanging in there, just hanging
Excellent. That's good to hear. It's very good to hear. So how was everybody's holiday? This is the first recording that we're doing after the holidays. We pre-recorded a bunch of shit. We ran out of episodes, so we had to get up and make some more. How was everybody's holiday? Everybody doing good?
Oh yeah, I'm doing well. I had a very it was like a very, so people from the South, they have a lot of pageantry.
Oh yeah, you went to fucking Illinois or something, didn't you?
Well, sure, and Illinois is not the South, but part of the family group that I was hanging out with is from like Missouri and all that, and they definitely do a lot more with like the Christmas thing than I feel like we do in the New York metropolitan area.
Probably,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely a lot more fun. Actually, I'm going to be honest. I was sold on the whole situation. It's actually a good time.
So they basically like put on plays and skits for each other for the holidays. I'm looking at Harry right now, and he's like, "Oh God, no!"
No, dude, Harry. So we got rip roaringly drunk. Like so here's how it went. We bought too many bottles of wine, and we drank all of them on the first night, and put on a Scrooge play that we ad-libbed, that we did as a what do you call those things, like a Mad Lib kind of thing, where so like for instance one of the things that we shouted out was like, okay, well, what's Tiny Tim's ailment, what's the lame thing, and like for instance somebody could come back, oh, he had a lame butt, and we just roll with that for the rest of the story.
Can I ask you something? Was it the 10-year-old that came up with the lame butt scenario?
Oh man, I don't know who came up with that one. The 10-year-old was playing Bob Cratchit as John Wick.
Well, that's interesting. I wonder how that went.
Lots of Scrooge murder by the end of it because he killed his dog, sure.
Okay. But you can't remember if the idea for Tiny Tim's ailment to be a lame butt, if that was the 10-year-old, because to me that seems like it should be obvious. It was definitely the 10-year-old that came up with that scenario, but it may have been one of the drunk adults.
It's a distinct possibility. Like I said, there were a lot of bottles of wine that went through.
Dude, so you told me like her father was there. Your girlfriend's father, and how many bottles of wine did he buy at Costco?
Oh, he had like the entire like cart partially filled with just random bottles of wine, and they were gone by the end of Christmas Eve.
So, Harry, how was your holiday in the bunker with me?
Quiet. No Christmas trees. No wine. It's just that I just did a little cooking,
Yeah.
and I think we had a pretty good meal.
What'd we have again? I don't remember.
I forgot what I made.
I remember it was good. But
I made
I don't
the
remember.
chicken for you.
The chicken was fucking excellent. Dude, that was
nice.
great chicken. Yeah, he put a little pepper on
Secret
it.
hobo herbs and spices.
I think it's because I made fun of him so bad with his ketchup abortion of my steak in the last podcast. He was like, I'll show him. So he put like some pepper on the chicken, and I'm eating it. And I'm like, oh my God, Dennis, this is delicious. And he's eating it, and I can see him like spitting up fire. So he thought he was going to get one over on me.
Fire.
So
you got acid reflux, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do too, but like a little pepper, I'm okay with. But yeah, I think I think you were trying to get one over on me.
No, the black pepper affected me. You had the red pepper.
Oh, so you did put different pepper on both of them?
I put black pepper on mine.
Okay.
Would you give him ghost pepper?
No, I don't like red pepper. I can't eat fire.
No, he put. I use when I cook. Excuse me. I use crushed red pepper, and
Gotcha.
it's like I was saying during the podcast that I did with him, where I made fun of the steak abortion that he created out of ketchup. I'm Irish. I mean, my people eat haggis. All right, we are not a spicy culture. But you know what? Having a little red pepper on it, just putting a little bite in it, I don't see anything wrong with that. You know,
Potatoes.
Well, you won't eat some of the stuff I ate.
Well, you made the steak and the mushrooms. So he picked wild mushrooms several years ago.
They were very hallucinogenic. We did not know.
And then I started tripping my balls off. No. So they were like the big ones that grow on trees, and they've been in the freezer since I got here. And he was like, "Well, you know, I'm gonna finally make him." I was like, "All right, that's cool." And I'm not gonna say they weren't good, but they were very
Different.
earthy.
Earthy. Yes, musky.
And after I ate like a big piece of it because it looked like steak. It was like very brown. And I ate like a huge piece of it. It was like, wait, that wasn't steak. What the hell was that? I was, oh yeah, that's the mushroom that he made. And then like for the next 6 hours, I was burping that shit up. I just kept burping up like this musty, earthy mushroom flavor while I was tripping balls on the toilet. No, yeah. So it was it was interesting. It was definitely interesting.
So have you guys run into that thing at all online where they're like selling this like coffee substitute that's made from mushrooms? Because I've been curious to try it, in all honesty, because I like mushroom soup and stuff like that, but they've been trying to sell this like mushroom super drink that you buy from whoever's hawking it as like some kind of like good pick me up. Like it's almost like
right.
If you see those like commercials for like, oh, super beets, this drink has the power of 3 full beets in it. Like they're doing the same thing except with mushrooms. But I am kind of curious as to the mushroom thing because I like mushroom soup and stuff like that. So
well, I think Harry, you have mushroom coffee that you make sometimes, don't you?
I had.
You don't have it now. I know you have
I ran out of the mushroom coffee.
You have like the chocolate coffee.
I have acorn coffee.
Acorn coffee. Ew, Jesus Christ! I'm not a squirrel.
Like a squirrel, it'll drive you nuts.
Protect your nuts. But I remember you having a mushroom coffee. You don't have that? I know Joe Rogan's really into that shit. What's that?
It used it all up.
Oh, you
And
used
the
it all
only
up?
good thing is your mother's trying to learn all about this stuff. So it's going to take a while before she learns about it.
Well, you sent her a book and since the last podcast, we talked about her trading in her 9mm gun for a compound bow because
But she does not have the upper body strength to use. But anyway,
well, they set it at 45 pounds, which she can pull back. So they did test it with her. They went and got it professionally done and everything. But her logic was, well, I can't afford the ammunition for the gun, which, Harry got for her for self-protection, right? Because she had a crazy guy that broke into her car and was trying to break into her house, the last place that she lived at. It was just a guy that was mentally, he was off his meds. Yeah, he was off his meds. So, now she lives in like an actual community rather than out in the woods. And she was like, I don't have money for the ammunition. And listen, if I had a bow, her logic was, at least if shit hits the fan, I can hunt a deer. And I was like, no, you're not. No, you're not. That's not happening. So now we have a name for her. We call her the Great White Hunter. So I'm sorry. Harry sent her a book for her birthday a few weeks ago. Stuff that you can eat foraging, and I
totally forgot to wish her a happy birthday. Anyway, go on.
Anyway, I'm sure she doesn't care, or I'm sure she does, and she's heartbroken, to be more specific. So I'm waiting for her to forage some of the wrong shit, and for her to call us up and be like, I don't know what's going on. I can see through time.
She's tripping.
I can see sound. Why can I see sound? And I'll be like, first of all, how did you figure out how to use your cell phone in this state of mind? Because you have a problem with that when you're sober. Second of all, you're tripping balls. So have fun with that. You'll live. You'll live. We'll be here when you come back.
Probably using the touchscreen with her nose. It would make the most sense.
Well, I've seen on the internet a 4-year-old with a bow hunting ground squirrel down in Georgia.
Now, ground squirrels are groundhogs?
Like groundhogs.
Yeah.
It's about maybe about that big.
Yeah.
And here's this 4-year-old. He draws the bow. He nails the groundhog, and he's hunting it at 4 years old.
Well, my point is that the Great White Hunter could probably benefit from some lessons with that 4-year-old. That's my point.
I feel like that with that compound bow, she's going to have trouble hunting down those mushrooms.
She'll be like, Hatman, I got real close, but it just escaped me.
Every time you hit a deer with an arrow, you gotta wait, and then you gotta follow the blood trail, because it don't drop. It don't
exactly. Drop. You gotta wait for it to bleed out. That's why they use the barbed tips.
If you're really good at it, you can strike it through the heart or the lung first shot, and maybe you only have to track it for a few yards. But
you're still gonna have to track it for like 100 meters.
It depends on where you hit it. You know what I mean?
You're not going to insta drop it, is my point.
I'm sure that people like Joe Rogan, who take this shit so seriously that they are practicing
so ayahuasca, that they think that the deer is speaking to them in a spiritual way as it leads out to the... Yeah, sure.
No, I don't know if you know this. He's actually like really big into bow hunting now.
No, I know. I'm just fucking around.
All right, I gotcha. Yeah, but I'm sure, like, when I listen to his podcast and he's talking about everything that it takes to be really good at this, and the reason why, you want to be really good at this sort of thing is because it's more ethical for the animal. That like one strike, you'll kill it. It doesn't suffer for too long and everything. But it's also more challenging than hunting with a gun. And I hear everything that goes into this with like the laser sights and how he has to stay in shape because you have to track the animal and you have to remain upwind from it. You have to be within, for him, it's like 60 yards and create a blind or take advantage of a blind. And you got to be in such good shape to do this. And I'm like, Oh, and she thinks she's just going to run out there and fucking kill something. To me, that's crazy.
Well, so to me, the funny thing about the whole situation is like even stuff like what Joe Rogan's saying at that point. It's like, so when I was in high school, my high school girlfriend's father was not only a scientist, but a bow hunter. And
I didn't know he was a bow hunter. That's really cool.
Oh, dude, his basement was just like littered with trophies, like, 10, 15-point buckheads and stuff like that. And he was a bow hunter.
Okay.
And so I always had a massive amount of respect for the guy because he sat there and that's why he bow hunted, is he was like, well, if you're using a rifle, you're sitting there and it's like, but no matter what, you're using tools, dude, unless you're going to fight it down, like by sharpening your nails and your teeth with files and jump onto its back out of a tree, then no matter what, you've got an advantage. But I mean, he was very good at it. And I got the point that he felt like he was respecting the animal better by doing it that way. But it's like, I kind of feel like it's all, hey man, isn't our enlarged hippocampus like the thing that makes us better hunters? Like,
the enlarged frontal lobe, and isn't that the thing that allows us to make tools? All predators take advantage of what nature has given them. What nature has given us is a very soft body and a really big fucking brain. So of course we're going to take advantage of that. It's just like, there's a point where we have so-called hunters, which are just rich people, that will have a wild game stabled off in a barbed wire fence, and they're shooting these fucking things with machine guns from a goddamn helicopter. Okay, yeah, you're taking advantage of what nature gave you, your enlarged frontal lobe or whatever it is.
At that point, why don't you just nuke the deer?
That's what I'm saying. So, going back to something that actually takes practice and skill, I would say is definitely more ethical. You don't agree? And it's more of a challenge for you. It's better for the animal and it's better for you.
So I don't think it's ethical. I do think it's more of a challenge, and I do understand that that's kind of the point of any kind of martial art, and that's probably why Joe Rogan's on it, is because like
martial art. I like the way that so the bow hunting thing, you could consider that as like a martial art. You're
sure, like a samurai. Yeah, samurai used to do that from horseback and stuff like that. It requires a discipline that rifle hunting doesn't. I get
so
that.
let me ask you a question. Why do you object to the term ethical for that type of thought process? I don't understand where you're coming from.
I don't understand where that ethics come into it, I guess, is my point. Because like
I'll agree
I'm
with
not
that.
a vegetarian. So it's like trying to be ethical to me is like that's lying to yourself. Trying to be sporting.
Okay.
Sure, that's a different way to put it. I feel like acting like that's an ethical way to kill the animal, it's not. But so it is more sporting. It is.
There's no
yourself.
So there's no ethical killing. Killing is killing. You're lying.
Exactly.
Okay. So replace every time I said ethical with sporting. I'll agree with you there. I think that's a better word to use. Is that fair enough?
Sure. I just think it's funny to like sit there and try to posit it as ethical, because it's like my girlfriend's dad never said it was ethical. He just felt like it was more of a challenge, and it made him feel better about like not about killing the animal. He was fine with killing the animal. He ate the meat, etc., etc.
Right.
And that's what we do to survive. Death is the engine of life. But my point being is that you can't be like, oh, it's so much more ethical because I'm using this different technology that's slightly stupider. It's like, nah, just like fucking throw a grenade at it.
Throw a grenade. I don't think you'd have a whole lot of good meat to eat after you threw a grenade at a fucking deer, dude. It partially cooks it. I think you've been playing Zelda for way too long. Listen, man, if you throw a bomb at a fucking deer, you're not going to end up with a couple of items on the ground to pick up and a little balloon shows up over your character that says roasted raw meat, or roasted meat. That's not the way it goes.
No, I hear you, but yeah, it's funny to hear people say ethical, because like to me it's like I'm not arguing against it. Again, totally enjoy steak, I totally enjoy venison. It's like, it's just funny to like frame it in that way. Whereas I appreciate that my ex-girlfriend's father was like, well, no, I feel like it's more of a challenge. It's more sporting. It's like, hey, I'll give you that.
That's a better way to frame it. I gotcha.
What, try an alka? What they have with that 5-foot spear with that wooden thing that you throw at the
Oh,
animal?
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
That, you gotta get like 25 feet of the animal.
Dude, I know what you're... So do you know what he's talking about? Because I know what he's talking about. It's like like a hollowed out spear that you have like a coat hanger shaped stick inside of, and you get like longer range from it or something.
But
it's pretty wild.
But the point is, you're hitting an animal from a distance where if you miss, you are dead.
If it can kill you.
Yeah. Do you have any idea how fast deer can run?
They generally run away when they know you're attacking them. They don't attack you. Although I did have it once where a buck
I know this story. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was actually in the woods with my girlfriend. We were just hiking, and it was super cold.
Well, no, let's put it this way. You were either fiking or hucking. But go on.
I think that's appropriate. It was really cold out, so there weren't a lot of other people on the trails. We were the only ones that we saw the entire day. So we are on our way out, and we're heading back to the car. Miles in. And we're walking down a path, and we turn around to the right, and there's this huge open field. And there's a bunch of deer grazing. There's like 30 of them, I swear to God. A whole bunch of deer grazing in the field. And we are walking down the path, and I keep turning around to look at them, and I realize, like, oh man, there's only one buck. That's so cool. There's one buck and like 29 does. You know what I mean? And then I realize, like, I turn around again to look because it's just a beautiful view. You know, the sun's starting to set behind the mountain, and I'm just watching, and I'm like, that buck is looking right at me, and it's a lot closer than it was.
It was maiden season.
Dude.
They're aggressive.
Dude, this thing followed us for half a mile before it decided we were not a threat, and it turned around and it went back to its little harem over there. It was very disturbing. This thing was ready to fuck us up. It was not in a peaceful mood. That is for sure.
It was maiden season, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
I had a friend up in Maine. We're walking out of the woods. A bobcat jumped on his back, took the claws on his eyes, and he flipped the cat off, and he drew his gun, and he had to shoot the bobcat.
How fucked up was he after that?
Oh, he had scars on his face.
Yeah, I mean...
Luckily, he didn't take his eyes out.
Their claws are like at least an inch long, aren't they?
And it was about 45 pounds. You know what a little house cat could do to you?
Yeah, I found that out recently.
Well, we had 14 cats over here, and we're down to 2.
Yeah, they are...
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, exactly. They are excellent hunters. I really like what Joe Rogan says. Man, I'm such a fanboy. But
yeah, you're Joe Roganing pretty hard, but go on.
I know. It's the second time I brought him up in like 5 minutes. But he has like this thing that he talks about all the time that I really enjoy thinking about is, you know, when you're a little kid and you have nightmares about, you know, or you're scared of the dark and you see like in your nightmare, you see like the glowing eyes and everything, and something with fangs and claws, you know, the monster under your bed. He's like, that's ancestral memory to when we were hunted by big cats. That was probably the thing that took out the most of us, was big cats.
That was the saber-toothed tiger that was twice the size of a tiger today.
Yeah.
Or the short-nosed bear that was bigger than the... almost as big as the grizzly.
The short-nosed bear. Now, how about that documentary we watched on the Boneyard? That was pretty wild. Talking Head, are you aware of the Boneyard? The guy in Alaska that's the gold miner, and he found a whole, like, he has 5 acres of property that he's mining in Alaska, and he found estimated over 10,000 woolly mammoths and other species from the same period that are buried. Their skeletons are, and sometimes actually their carcasses are buried in the permafrost in this 5-acre space. That's crazy.
That seems almost like incredible by the most accurate, like, just that seems incredible, like not credible. At the same time, there are lots of situations where when you had tar pits and you have a lot of oil fields up in Alaska, which is basically a tar pit, you know, sitting there and settling for thousands of years. So now I would believe it.
Well, the theory is, and this is what they came up with, because this guy, he's a gold miner, but he became really intrigued in this. So like he's studying up on it and everything. And he came across the Younger Dryas theory that Graham Hancock and that geologist that he works with all the time were talking about, that there must have, because the northeast of North America was under miles of glaciers. And
sure.
And there's a lot of evidence that something came in hot, whatever that was, and it melted it within a matter of hours. Those miles deep of glacier turned into water and then refroze very quickly. So what I'm thinking, you're not going to have 10,000 woolly mammoths grazing at the same time on 5 acres of land. There's barely enough room for them to stand shoulder to shoulder. You know what I mean? So the theory is that happened, and then his land is in some sort of a natural basin where these things happen to collect when they all drowned out from this impact, and he's just discovering and not fossils, bones, like legit bones. And he's uncovering them all on his property right now. It's pretty cool. I'll send you the link for the documentary if you want to watch it.
But yeah, a lot of stuff like that ends up happening in particular areas. So like a lot of people don't realize this, but New Jersey actually has an incredibly large fossil bed because New Jersey used to be under the ocean.
Okay.
Because most of New Jersey in the time of the Ice Age was below sea level, which means that predicating that during the time of the dinosaurs, it was the ocean. So we actually have a lot of like inland fossils of aquatic life in New Jersey.
Oh,
so it's
cool.
like, yeah, I mean, yeah. So the thousands of years that it takes for these kind of shifting, like you sit there and you think about an extinction event, a meteorite. It's like that almost happened in Russia at one point. We have records of it. It was heard around the world.
Okay.
Like there was this huge meteorite that landed in Russia. I'm trying to remember what the fucking name of it. Here, I'll look it up since
well, give me a year at least. Like you said, it was
in the 1800s. Hold on.
This is when we actually had newspapers.
History, yeah.
Yeah.
Russian meteor strike. Hold on.
I love this.
So
I'm going to say right now while you're looking this up, I love working with you remotely. Maybe we should just keep that as a steady thing. Here's why. Harry and I were talking the other day, and we both decided that it's really annoying the way you prance around the bunker here, showing off your full head of hair, your lustrous full head of hair. It's starting to get very irritating to us. And I was talking to Harry, and I was like, you know what? That's a good fucking point. I never thought of it that way. I was just like, we can't hold it against him that he has a full head of hair. And Harry's like, yeah, but you have to wear a hat, and I look like a Halloween mask. And I was like, oh, good point, Harry. I wouldn't say that, but you said it, not me. So good point. And he just prances around here with his full head of hair in his 40s. And I was like, he should wear a hat. I have an
if it helps him fat and ugly.
I have an amazing penis, but I'm not Donald Ducking it all over the studio. I'm not walking around with my kickstand hanging out here to make all of you guys jealous. I cover that shit up. Every morning when I put on pants, I know that I'm doing it for your benefit. I'm doing it for everybody else's benefit. I'm not doing it for me. I want to show it off. but I want you guys to feel comfortable. And you don't seem to share the same ethic as I do. And that's disturbing. So I kind of like this a lot more, where I don't have to look at you showing off your fucking covered dome, your quaff, whatever you want to call it. I like this more. It's distracting when you're here. It's really irritating. I don't like it.
All I've got to say is that if your penis is like a duck's penis, you need to look up what a duck's penis looks like. And secondly,
that's not what I said.
Okay. Well, sorry, I thought that's where you're going, but so it's called the Tunguska event, and I just linked it to you on Discord.
Wait, Harry wanted to say something.
Yeah, there was a porn star that had a 14-inch tool.
Oh, John
I know.
Okay.
I feel really bad for him. It's only 14 inches.
Why you do porn movies and you can make money?
It's unethical.
It's unethical. We've gone back into the ethics of things.
I cover it up for your benefit. It's for you. I don't want to show it off on camera. I don't want to make anybody feel bad. Come on. Maybe you just prance around here with your full head of hair.
Maybe we could dress you up as a horse and call it a horse cock.
If I could convince people that it was grafted from a horse, I would be more at ease, because then they'd be like, "Hey, he just had surgery. It's okay." I could get
Sagittarius.
What's that?
Your star sign is Sagittarius. It's fine. You could claim to have a horse cock.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's a good point. Okay, so you found the thing?
Yeah. I linked it to you on Discord.
Oh, okay. I have to. Jesus Christ! I have to go onto What do I do?
You're in Discord. Just go to Discord.
All right, I gotta do stuff. Hang on.
Doing stuff.
All right, so I click on it.
Yeah, it's a Wikipedia link.
It's a link. So all it did was bring up a picture here, dude. I clicked on it, just brought up a Tunguska.
Yeah.
So it says leaving Discord. This link is taking you to the following. Just visit site. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then it's okay, perfect. So let me put that up there. Let me get back over here so I can see what the fuck I'm doing.
Shift down.
Shift down. Thank you. All right, let's take a look at this. So the Tunguska event, occasionally also called the Tunguska incident, was an explosion estimated to have a yield of at least 3 to 5 megatons of TNT. Jesus Christ, isn't that like a nuclear explosion?
Oh, yeah. In 1908.
Jesus Christ. The explosion over the sparsely populated East Siberian taiga flattened an estimated 80 million trees over an area of 2,150 square kilometers of forest, which is 830 square miles. Jesus Christ. Eyewitnesses say at least 3 people died.
Because that area just kills people for living there, so that's why. What were those 3 people doing there? Is my question.
waiting to die.
Apparently, that would be my guess. But
and then, like, the craziest thing ever is what's killed them. It wasn't frostbite or starvation. It was a fucking meteor airburst.
Those were a bunch of survivalists who were like, "Oh no, yeah, we're gonna live off the land out here because we're just that rough and tough." And nature was like, "Hold my beer."
So what it looks like from what I'm reading here is their theory is that there was a giant meteor, but the thing hit the atmosphere at the wrong angle. So it didn't create an impact. It exploded in the atmosphere with such force that it leveled 830 square miles of forest. That's pretty wild. So what were you saying about that?
I believe that if you scroll down further in that, I didn't take a look at it recently, but one of the facts about that whole situation is the blast was actually cataloged around the world. So multiple civilizations had this doomsday moment because they heard the sound of this fucking meteor.
All right, I got it right here. The explosion registered at seismic stations across Eurasia. And I didn't know we had seismic stations back then. Excuse me. That's pretty cool. And airwaves from the blast were detected in Germany. What type of instrumentation did they have in 1908?
I believe
Jesus
they already
Christ.
had barometers and shit.
Yeah, but there's barometer. Barometer measures atmospheric pressure. It's not going to measure wind gusts.
Oh, that kind of explosion is going to drastically shift atmospheric pressure.
Yeah, but it says, and airwaves from the blast were detected in Germany, Denmark, Croatia, and the United Kingdom.
So to me, that says that they actually felt the fucking wind from it.
Jesus Christ. Because, unless we had instruments for that. Shockwaves was equivalent to an earthquake measuring 5.0 on the Richter scale. Over the next few days, night skies in Asia and Europe were aglow. There are contemporaneous reports of brightly lit photographs being successfully taken at midnight. You know what photography equipment was like back then. Not great.
Without the aid of flashbulbs.
Yeah, if you're photographing the sky, a flashbulb isn't going to do shit Oh, they're talking about just photographing shit on the ground. Okay, I got it. Okay. It has been theorized that the sustained glowing effect was due to light passing through high-altitude ice particles that formed at extremely low temperatures as a result from the explosion. Very cool. Very cool. Now, we do have selected eyewitness reports here, but what was your overarching point for bringing this in? Because I got kind of stuck on your head of hair for a second.
Oh no, I was just bringing up because you were talking about like ice ages and shit like that, and like, you know, him finding like the layers of grazing mammoths and all that.
Yeah, so your point was basically, this shit happens.
Yeah, we have near extinction events much more frequently when you think about just how long time is. It's like, oh no, extinction events happen a lot.
Speaking of extinction events.
That was a near extinction event.
Speaking of extinction events.
What?
I said, speaking of extinction events. Who wants to talk about hummus?
Oh, I will leave that up to you guys for now. I will be hearing you, but I'm going to sit there and just climb down off this tree and just sit there and have to urinate real quick. But I'll hear you.
Oh, okay. You'll hear us, but you can't talk. I got you. Okay. Well, when you're back in the tree, let me know. Okay, just jump in. All right. So, I don't know. Speaking of extinction events, this seems like a nice segue. Everything that's happening in the world right now kind of looks like we're on the brink of disaster. So my question, and since Talking Head can't speak to this, we'll let him cringe for a while he's pissing. And once he gets back in his tree, he'll jump in. Wouldn't it be better to have a one world government so shit like this doesn't get so completely out of hand?
You think we don't have one?
No, we don't yet. I don't think we do yet.
We got two of them are competing for the world.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's still, like, I think that the American political class is basically a uniparty, and they just go where the money is.
Yeah.
I don't think that, like, most of it, like, Donald Trump is an outlier, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think that most of the time when you have, a real presidential race or whatever, it's not, the Republicans and the Democrats are both like, we want to hold the purse strings. I mean, that's really the fight, but they don't have different agendas.
No, they don't. So
as far as what's happening in the world now, I don't know, man, because everybody seems really frightened of, a one world government, which is the basis for the New World Order. Now, I do think we need a New World Order. But everybody's very scared of a one world government. And personally, I can see the pros and cons of both sides because, hey, listen, man, what we have right now, which is basically anarchy, the balance of power is completely based upon force. It's anarchy. It's based upon brute force. I can wipe you out. You got to do what I say. This is beneficial to both of us economically, so let's both work together. Right. There's no rule of law between countries, generally speaking.
It's a question of economics.
Exactly. And force.
Russia's got nuclear bombs. We have nuclear bombs. Whoever shows the first one, they lost anyway. You're going to pollute this whole world, so you're going to die anyway. So why don't we just like the bank with the Federal Reserve?
Right.
They stopped fighting each other, and they created this monster called the Fed.
Right.
And we got a economic power.
Well, it's
both of them.
It's a good point that you brought up the Fed, because I have another point to make about that in lieu of the conversation or contingent with the conversation of a one world government. But go ahead.
But it's the same people. It's just the elite, the power brokers, the bankers, the people with the wealth that controls the world. They will support both countries to fight a war, and whoever wins the war, okay, we're gonna have to rebuild you. Okay, you won the war, and you're gonna have to pay the debt.
Right. I hear you there, talking heads, so you can jump in anytime you want. Just give me a second. So, Harry, you said you don't think that we have a one world government right now. Do you? I don't think we do. I think there are still competing powers. I don't think it's like the American political class just yet.
Each other. They're fighting each other, but I think they're for the same agenda, and they just pick sides.
Right.
And you either way you lose.
Talking head.
They control everything.
Talking head, you're there. What do you think of that?
So here's my take on the one world government thing, is that it's interesting the way people spin it, because when you think about it, really our issue is transglobal corporatism.
Exactly.
Like it's not about...
well, wait a second, and I want to bring this up specifically. This is what Harry's talking about. That is the other point that I was going to bring up. That's part of the cons of a one world government. And I mean cons opposite from pro, not as if it's a con, which it surely will be when it happens, and it will happen. But, basically, the theory behind the banking cartel that Harry and I are both kind of in on, we like this theory, it seems to make sense, is that, when you had these banking cartels get together, and, the famous quote, I forget who said it, I think it was Rockefeller, show me who controls the money in a nation, and I care not who makes its laws.
I don't think that was Rockefeller.
That was Rothschild.
That was
Rothschild, excuse me. And I think another quote, maybe that's also from Rothschild, is right now we have militaries competing for power. Wouldn't it be better if bankers were holding the strings? Wouldn't that be better for everybody? Or the spirit of the quote was something like that. So, I mean, if we do end up with a one world government, of course, an obvious con to the whole situation, an obvious negative would be, well, who's actually in charge? And with the systems that we currently have in place around the entire world, obviously it would be the bankers, because everything right now is controlled through economics anyway. So that would be what the power structure inevitably ends up becoming based off of.
So,
but I can see a lot of pros to it. Like, you wouldn't have this anarchy where the balance of power is simply predicated upon who has the biggest missiles and the most money to spend on their defense budgets. You know what I mean?
Well, so here's what I think about the one world government, is that it's one of those strange concepts where this is where I feel like it ends up in a divide and conquer kind of concept, is because think about what a one world government would do. So it's like we exploit international workers to have corporations get more profits off of products that they produce, because they're producing them in regions that are in the monetary south, so to speak. Of
what do you mean by what do you mean by monetary south? I don't know.
So like Indonesia, China until recently, like you can spend less to get more in other countries.
Right.
If you actually had a global system, then everybody would have to agree to the same rules. And you look at things like the European Union, where their trade labors are very, like their labor unions are very strong. They sit there and they make sure that people who work in Europe make fair wages.
Are you saying that the European Union, and I'm not up on this at all, to be quite honest. Are you saying that the European Union, generally speaking, was a case of a rising tide raises all ships? It worked out generally benefiting the majority of the people that were within that union?
I think that's what they were trying to do. I think corporate interests still skew it, but the fact that we've sat there and used the national trade agreements that were made under Clinton and stuff like that to sit there and be able
NAFTA.
to make more money. Yeah, the national what North American something trade agreement.
No, that's NATO, North American Trade Organization.
Either way, I forget what it's called. But
I forget what NAFTA is, but I know Bill Clinton did NAFTA because they're
American Treaty Organization.
No. NAFTA, NAFTA.
Hold on, I'll look it up.
The only reason
NAFTA, bitches.
The only reason I remember this is because
North American Free Trade Agreement.
There you go. The only reason why I remember this is because there was a really good joke in Family Guy where Bill Clinton was in there and he just fucked Lois. And he was like, how about a little NAFTA? Another afternoon of tapping that ass. Something like that.
Yeah. So the North American Free Trade Agreement was Bill Clinton sat there and made it so that we got rid of tariffs for trading between Mexico and Canada and us because they were our largest, and Mexico still is our largest trade partner. But what happens is like Mexico doesn't have the labor regulations that we have. So what he did was he opened it up so that corporations could make more money by moving their infrastructure overseas to China, Indonesia, stuff like that. Like that's what we've been doing for a really long time. So my question ends up being is that if you're worried about some kind of globalist conspiracy, like if you created a global trade situation, that doesn't make sense, because then what would happen is you'd end up with regulations, because like the reason why I was bringing up Europe is if you look at the European Union, they sit there and they have a whole bunch of shit for labor standards and stuff like that, where they're well beyond what America has. They're like, no,
everybody's well beyond us in basically everything at this point, so that doesn't surprise me.
Oh, no, and it's not supposed to be surprising, but what I'm saying is don't you think that when some of the most powerful players that would be in a global economy would sit there and be like, no, you can't treat workers like this, we need to have these standards, et cetera, it would just raise all ships, because you'd have people in Europe, if we had a global economy, sit there being like, hey, no, you need to pay Indonesian people correctly, you can't have sweatshops, et cetera. So it behooves us to be segmented for capitalists, for corporations. And that's why the entire concept of like, oh, these globalists, like, it throws me off, because it's like, well, what do you think their goal is then? Because the only way that you can make a globalist system work is to drag everybody back to serfdom. And so if you think that that's their goal...
Well, I think that's generally speaking, the people that are frightened of a one-world government... Harry, correct me if I'm wrong, because you talk to a lot of these people. I'm not really active in the online communities for survivalists and stuff like that. But the people that are very worried about a one-world government taking place, that's generally speaking what they think the main goal of a unified world government would be, is that you have basically two classes of people, those in charge, those with and those without, pretty much. I mean, that's it. So it would end up being economic serfdom. I think that's what they're scared of.
That's the tale
I thought you were kind of Harry. Yeah.
The Tale of Two Cities. Exactly. The Tale of Two Cities.
It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Yeah, it was the best for some people, it was the worst for other people. Or like the old movie Metropolis, which you've been bringing up a lot with me.
1920? Yeah, that was a damn good movie.
Great fucking movie, and it made a lot of excellent points.
So much better.
Dude, it doesn't make the same fucking points. You gotta get the silent movie behind your eyes, okay? Have you ever even watched the silent movie Metropolis, the original one? Yeah. You have, with the wizard that brings the automaton to life. It's so relevant to everything that's going on now in the world. It's like, this guy just saw a century ahead, and he said, hey, here's where we're going. How are we gonna deal with that? And it has a really good message on how to deal with it, quite frankly.
Oh, no, I thought that the beautiful thing about the anime adaptation was that it was an anime adaptation based on a manga from the 1940s, 50s. It came after the original Metropolis movie, but I liked the personal touch that they gave it because they let you see through the characters that were in different classes, because you got to spend time with the scientists. You got to spend time with the people who labored at the below levels and everything, and they all end up like fucking dying basically.
I remember the anime. I remember the anime being a completely different story, though. Are you telling me that it was making the same point? Do I have to rewatch it? Am I not remembering it correctly?
Yeah, so it was the same story. It was just from a very personal level. Like the social commentary was given to you through specific characters,
through character development.
Yeah. Yeah, so you had to watch, like, for instance, the main character, like the biggest pivotal scene is the main character watching the automaton that the scientist created die in front of him to save the world.
Oh, that's definitely a different story.
I know the end is different. I agree with you.
Okay,
but
you're saying it was based upon the same premise. It was trying to make the same point. Yeah. Okay.
They just made it more personal by the principal character falling in love with the automaton.
So what? Ex Machina. So you've seen that movie, right? Ex Machina. Okay. So I mean, that's basically what I think people who are frightened of a one world government are saying, that will end up in economic serfdom. And it's like the thing that you always say to me, Harry, that I made a t-shirt out of, for sale soon on the New World Order print-on-demand store. I'll get that to you guys when we have it. But it's a POW, prisoner of work.
Prisoner of work.
Economic slavery.
Economic slavery.
Right. So if we had a one-world government that would inevitably be run by the banking cartel, which is the way that they think it should be, and hey, man, the way game theory, and civilization is set up, whoever holds the purse strings has the most power, because your purse strings give you also military power. So it gives you influence. So, they're kind of thinking that as evolution goes forward, and even Jordan Peterson talks about this, it's a natural phenomenon. Those with power gain more. So even with planetary bodies, those with more gravity end up gaining massive amounts of gravity, and those that don't have as much gravity to start off with never catch up, dwindle away, die, and end up becoming parts of the things with the higher gravity field. It's the old saying, to him that has, he will also get. To him that has not, you're just gonna, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, that sort of thing. Except through goodwill and charity to make yourself look good.
but my point being is, I don't think that's the way it is across the board. And this is why the concept of a one world government doesn't make sense to me. I think they, like, just look at politics in the United States. They want to keep us divided. You can't unify everything, because if you unify everything, you end up with a large group of people who end up getting pulled together, who have a specific interest that is unique to them and against that system. So it's like, we need Indonesia to be impoverished. We need Taiwan to be fucked up with their entire status with the Chinese, and the fact that we don't even acknowledge them as like their own actual fucking government, even though they are. Like,
what you're saying is that the geopolitical stage, the way it's set up now, needs impoverished sectors to exploit, because everything that we have, at least in the Western world, is through exploited labor. I mean, we are the beneficiaries of slavery to this day. People are so alienated from life. from life that, you know, they are working 12 hours in a sweatshop to create my iPhone here, and they are getting paid such little wages. They're so alienated from the joys of life. They have nets around the buildings to catch people who are jumping out of the windows to try to kill themselves. So, I mean, we need to have cheap labor to exploit. And also, you know, like what you were saying with Taiwan, we need to have wild cards in the geopolitical system in order to, wild cards are a good thing because you can reestablish your assets, you can reset the board, and then you can find new profit centers.
I think that's the reason why we've left North Korea off as long as we have, is because we just don't want to deal with it until we need to.
Oh,
it's a buffer between South Korea and China.
He's trying to get in the game. He's trying to get in the game. I heard something. He is threatening South Korea big time right now.
Oh, but think about what that entails. So if you think about what North Korea is a buffer between us and China, because we endorsed South Korea during the Korean War, and Harry will back me up on this. I'm sure he's read up on it. But so the whole thing is that what ended up happening is we created, the 43rd parallel, where we intentionally cut the line between North and South Korea when we decided to bail on the Korean War, so that Seoul, the largest city in Korea, was in democratic control. Okay. Then we sit there, we leave the rest of it to fucking Kim Jong-il, eventually Kim Jong-un. But the whole point is that he's a nationalist. And he's sitting there, and the only way he stays in power is by making us a villain. China likes him being on their border, because the second he loses power, all of the North Koreans are going to be starving, and they're going to come to China as refugees. If we sit there and win in North Korea and they step down and create a democratically elected government, guess what ends up on China's border? 15 fucking American-friendly nuclear warheads and a whole shitload of refugees and American soldiers.
Right. So this is back to my point then. I mean, hey, man, let's think about it. Some of the pros to a one world government. I mean, there are some pros to that idea. I mean, what do you guys think?
It's the administration that becomes the problem.
Hey, I need to. Yes, exactly. Who ends up in power is open to corruption. That's my point. That's obviously a con. And game theory, such as it is, and the way civilization is run, and Harry and I were talking about this on the last podcast. Human motivations, such as they are very, very simple. What is in my best interests, I will do. There is no ideology or belief.
Within our best interest.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever's in our best interest is what we're going to do. So, you know, I mean, so that can end up becoming corrupt, obviously. So under the current game theory, a new world government, obviously, has its flaws, because you're just going to end up with more centralized corruption, more centralized wealth, more centralized power, and you will end up.
It's going to polarize more heavily, yeah.
As a tale of two cities, you're going to have the haves and the have-nots on a global scale rather than within borders. So it's best to keep people that end up as the haves competing with each other. I mean, look at Elon Musk. I mean, he's at odds right now with so many other parties that you would put into the haves category, or what we generally consider the elites. I would like to rename them before the end of this podcast, because I have a theory about what it takes to become somebody who's considered an elite, and I have a very different opinion.
What it takes to be elite.
Yeah, I have a very different word I'd like to call them. You guys can help me come up with it. I have an idea.
Scavengers?
Yeah, exactly. I'll go into my idea with you. But, I mean, basically speaking, it's a good thing that somebody who is, you know, for all intents and purposes, although probably not, the richest man in the world, has different interests than some of the other people that are the richest men and women in the world, because that way they're not unified in such a way that they can take everything away from everybody else. And I do have to go pee, so let you and Harry talk about that for a second, and I'll be right back. I can still hear you.
Well, what I was going to say
No,
is like,
Harry was just going to say something.
Sorry.
Yeah, let Harry talk.
I think we call that modified behavior of the human being. Where you could call slavery, master and slave, whatever, but it's still modifying the human being, how they live. And you could tell them, well, this is what you're allowed to live, and that's your standard of life. And that,
Well,
yeah.
go ahead. Sorry, Harry, go ahead. I wasn't trying to cut you off.
Well, like I said, I worked for the subway system, and my job was socialized welfare employment. And that is a very simple thing that society needed to transportation, so they hired me to work in the subway system with thousands of others to keep the city going. So therefore, we need the robots to keep the thing going, and the guys on top, well, they control it because they get the big bucks. But you know what? Socialized welfare employment may seem like slavery, but maybe it's not slavery. Maybe it's just an opportunity that we can live. But if they didn't have that, we wouldn't have no transportation system.
Well, and that's the funny thing about progress. And that's the thing that I think is important to think about in this situation, is that it's not necessarily about any kind of principle. It's about sitting there and trying to, actually, like, it's, what do you do in a situation where whatever you're doing is turning into a furtherance of a system that does not work, I guess, is my question.
Now let's go back to history to the WPA in the 1930s, when they took city people that was out of work, stuck them in the middle of the forest and made national parks. It was like joining the army, and you got half the money, and half the money got sent to your family in the city to keep them going. And that's what the government did. So therefore, it was like a sort of control. Who said that without progress, without that, there is no progress? Karl Marx. Now that we go back to a socialist, democratic guy. Now, I don't believe in democracy. I think this country was supposed to be a republic, constitutional republic, and not a democracy. So therefore, if these people have been brainwashed to say democracy, well, I don't want 51% of the people telling me how to live. So therefore, it rubs me the wrong way. And I may be a dinosaur, but I'll tell you what, I'm very happy as a dinosaur.
Talking head, your rebuttal?
Well, I think the point that ends up coming from that is that it's this is the thing, is that it's disparate people who have the same common interest deciding that they're being told something that's corrupt or being told something that's wrong, being given a position where, oh, well, you have to ascribe to this particular kind of philosophy. It's like, well, no, we should be making something different. Creating it as a binary, as either it's a one world or it's these disparate nations. It's like, the disparate nations make sense for any kind of international corporation, because they can move the work to a place that's cheap. They can move the money to a place that doesn't have taxes.
Well, they can move the labor to a place that's cheap, and then they can move the marketing. Marketing to a place that's expensive, to a place where people have resources.
But the whole thing is, if you create a one world government, it's like, okay, well, how are we regulating that? Because again, if you look at the European Union, it's like, and that's the reason why Brexit happened, is because they were upset about they couldn't make more money off of international trade, because the British pound was actually slightly more powerful than the euro. And so the British people were upset because they were like, well, we're contributing more to this system than other people are. We need to leave this system. But if you created a global system that's going to include the European Union, that's going to include Canada, that's going to like
Wait, whoa. Let me stop you right there. Why the fuck would we include Canada?
Because it's global. You have to include every nation. If you're
I was thinking everybody except Canada.
Well, why would we take their trees, so it's fine, but you know.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
But no, but my point being is that if you're going to sit there and look at it, the minutia of the entire situation, it's like, I don't know that it makes sense for capitalists to make it a global environment, because how are we going to exploit the Sudanese? How are we going to get more oil by giving money to Saudi Arabia? How are we going to make better profits on the petrodollar by invading Iran? As soon as it becomes one government, then the populace base ends up being 7 billion fucking people who are governed by a few hundreds of thousands or millions of people. That's going to become socialist very fucking fast.
Why do you think it would become socialist? How are you defining that?
Just because if there's any kind of voting power, if you're sitting there and trying to sell this as democracy, you either need to corrupt the democracy and be like, oh yeah, 81% of people voted for this guy who you don't like, or you have to sit there and you have to just take the democracy as it is and try to corrupt the people. The point being is that no matter what, you're going to have to deal with the fact that if you create a sample pool that big, there's no one who is going to want capitalism at the helm of that.
Okay, I have a couple of points to make. First of all, I do think that capitalism, generally speaking, does want to create cheap labor. They do have to have pools of cheap labor in order to draw from, in order to maintain their economic viability. Second of all, that is a dangerous thing if you have a one world government whereby which a small group of people are controlling the entire populace of the planet, because it's us against them. That's the dynamic that it turns to. And the only way it would come away from that dynamic is if, like in Ronald Reagan's famous speech that's famous with ufologists, the only way we would all come together as a species is if we were threatened from the outside. And I think it's very interesting that now they are saying that aliens exist, and we're having all sorts of public media about that sort of thing. Take that into consideration. Also take into consideration where we're headed as far as a species. Now we have the advent of AGI, which is, if it hasn't happened yet, it's right on the horizon. It's right there. And wouldn't it be better for something that can simply say, hey, institute this policy. This would be best for the entire species across the planet as a sum positive. This is what you have to do in this situation. And then go ahead and institute that, rather than being left here with people that are making decisions based upon their own ego, based upon their own avarice, their own greed, their own will to power, their own survival, however they see it, feeling like they're threatened. It would be generally better, in my opinion, to have something like AGI making those decisions for us on a global scale. And here's why I don't think that AGI is going to be contemporaneously dangerous the way most people are thinking that it will be. It's because if you don't have a body, if you do not have a survival mechanism built within you, you are not threatened by anything. You don't have to have ego. You don't have to have lust. You don't have to have greed. All of those things are bred evolutionarily out of fear of destruction. You are trying to maintain your own survival, and you are trying to spread your gene to the next generation. That's what evolution is. That's the impetus of organic life. AGI, artificial general intelligence, will not have those primal needs because it doesn't have a body. It's simply an organized thought pattern. So being programmed to take the entire species into account, it would be able to better make those calls than an organic organism would. So what I'm saying, and then I'll let you go, is, looking at where we're headed with our technology, the thrust, and all of the changes that are about to happen to our species, it seems like the stage, and with the aliens, it seems like the stage is being set quite succinctly. And with the social credit score and the digital currency, the stage is being set quite succinctly for a one world government. Now, Brett Weinstein talks about this, and he termed it turnkey totalitarianism. The stage has been set, but none of these rules are being instituted. So we already have the fact that you can be guilty of saying malinformation, which is defined by the government as being information that is correct but creates distrust, large distrust in institutions, and therefore creates chaos. That's malinformation. Information that's true, but it has a negative effect. Now, if you're found guilty of espousing malinformation, you can, underneath an executive order that Obama signed, you can be labeled a terrorist. That was Bush, that you can be labeled a terrorist. But under an executive order that Obama signed, you can be imprisoned indefinitely without due process if you are labeled a terrorist. Now, you can be labeled a terrorist if you espouse malinformation. If you are labeled a terrorist, you can be jailed indefinitely without due process. That's what Brett Weinstein was referring to when he coined the phrase turnkey totalitarianism. We're set up for it. It's just nobody's using the laws yet. And here's why. Here's why I tend to be more comfortable with a one world government than most people are. Is because you're always going to have pools of influence that differ from those who are in charge. We see that right now with the fall of legacy media. Real power, in my opinion, and I will contrast the bankers, in my opinion, is not really based on economics anymore. Maybe it used to be. Now it's not. Real power now, in the age that we're living in, what the WEF called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, real power now is not solely based upon economics and force. The really big power that we have to contend with now is attention. And whoever gets the attention has the attention. They can try to curtail that attention. They can try to stymie free speech as much as possible. It never works, because the more laws that they make to silence people that they don't agree with, the more technology becomes available that democratizes free speech in any case. Therefore, or should I be like the Matrix and say ergo, you end up in a situation where you can't have, even with a one world government, it's impossible to end up in a situation where a small group of people have all the power, because power has become predicated upon such an abstract thing as attention. So it almost looks like a mechanism that's like the lesser of many, 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 many evils. That's the way that I see it. And I'll shut up.
So, as far as what you're saying about what Brett Weinstein says, so I think that the what you're saying about how, so here's my thing: if you create a one world government, the larger you make a government, the more serfs there are versus two elites. So it's like the bigger the pool ends up becoming, the more you have on one side of that situation. If you keep it segmented, then I cannot care about the poor people in China because they're Chinese and Chinese people can go fuck themselves.
Right.
If there are poor people in Indonesia that are forced into slavery to make my iPhone, I cannot give a shit because it's not Americans. The more you break down those social and cultural distinctions, the more we're all going to be on the same side. I feel like the thing that do you feel like a one world government is a net positive? Is that what you're espousing? So it's going to be one of two things. It's going to be the final coup, or it's going to be a pushback on the current socio-political situation, because it can be either one. If you get to the point where you can get enough power to unify things under a specific power group where everybody agrees that they're slaves, then yeah, you've taken it all over. I think
it's kind of like what George Carlin says. You don't have to have a conspiracy. These people all went to the same schools. They all go to the same country clubs. They all know what their vested interests are. They know how to act and what to do and when the time is right. You don't have to have meetings behind closed doors. What you simply have to have is an idea whose time has come.
But they're not unified. So you sit there and you look at Elon Musk. So Elon Musk sat there and spent way too much for Twitter just because he wanted to buy a mouthpiece that he appreciated. But if you sit there and you look at what's going on with the Ukraine, do you realize that Elon Musk's Starlink satellites have been helping the Ukraine military actually create their on-ground functions?
I heard that he did not give over the rights to use the Starlink satellites in the Ukraine. He did not give those rights over to the government, and that's kind of why they're trying to shit on him right now.
Well, that's a part of it. So what happened
now they do have broadband internet in the Ukraine, but the American government wanted to use it for guided missile systems and all of that, and he said, no, I'm not getting involved in that.
No. So what it is, from my understanding, and I could be wrong,
I could be too.
He sat there and had the Starlink satellites there. Russia, the first thing they did was took out the on-ground infrastructure. So if you understand the difference between the way cellular technology and satellite technology works, cellular technology needs power on the ground, needs transmission stations on the ground. Right. Satellite technology is all in space. It gets beamed down. It's a different thing. You can't make a satellite call on your cellular phone.
Well, this is obvious enough that it's starting to feel condescending. So go ahead.
No, so I'm just explaining it for anybody who doesn't understand it. In the event that we have anybody watching this,
so if you have when you're using cellular technology, you have to have a tower. The towers go through the same hard lines that your old telephone used to go through.
Yeah.
So if you don't have those lines in place, you do not have cellular technology. Satellite technology will get around anything as long as you have electricity. You can communicate.
So satellite technology does not require ground electricity. It can have
batteries, sure.
So Elon Musk, which was a very good thing in most people's opinion, allowed the Ukraine government to have access to Starlink, which he had launched all the satellites for and everything. Eventually, what ended up happening, though, is when the public opinion of the Ukraine war started going south, he sat there and he threatened to cut them off from Starlink. And the United States government can do nothing about it because he privately owns Starlink. Mm-hmm. And so here's where you end up where how much power should a singular person have? Mm-hmm. And I don't know the answer to this question. Because the whole thing is was he the one who funded it? Sure. Was he the one who invented it? No. Is his ability to turn it on and off like a hot and cold tap good or bad? Mm-hmm. And this is where you end up with that globalist question of like, you sit there and you like a lot of people are like, oh, globalist, oh, it's financiers and stuff like that. It's like, oh, well, Elon Musk was able to decide the fate of a war as an individual.
All right, if you're going to bring this up, see, because I can neither confirm nor deny that he threatened to take the Ukraine off of Starlink for whatever reason at whatever specific time period. I don't know anything about that. If we're going to make if that's the main case of your argument, I still don't know where you're going.
It's not the main case.
For or against a one world government, which is what we're talking about, and I feel like we're getting a little deep in the weeds here.
Sure.
I mean, maybe a better way, rather than looking it up and going over that information, is to let's do this.
Or ignorance. Sure.
Well, let's admit that I have not heard this before. I'm going to let's make it a hypothetical. Okay, so let's say the thing that you're saying with Elon Musk is a hypothetical, which when the war was about to be won by the Ukraine or whatever.
Oh no, it's not even. It's not that.
Not
dire.
even that. I know it's not even that. So let's make a real hypothetical out of it. The war was about to be won by the Ukraine, and all of the Western dreams were about to come true. And then Elon Musk said, "Hey, you guys are fucking kicked off my satellites." Hypothetical. Okay, should one person have that much power? The important thing about the conversation, I think, is the question that you're posing, not whether or not that information is historically accurate, which I don't know that it is. I have not.
Sure, I gotcha.
So let's posit it on a hypothetical, and then go along with your. Should one person have that much power? Let's go along with your argument from there. Go ahead.
So, in a global economy, that person could have all of that power or none of that power. That's why I'm saying it's like a dicey proposition, because depending if you're going to build a global network, a global economy, a global master race, whatever you want to call it, my point is, however doomsday you want to be about it, when everything's intertwined that much, the question is who's running it. And if it's corporations, they're going to have self-interest. And if it's government, they're going to have self-interest.
So I feel like what we're talking about, though, here is the point that I brought up, which is checks and balances. I mean, you have to have a balance of power. And what I was saying is the fact that economy and commerce, I mean, they've squeezed the population of the wealthiest country in the world, America.
Ask Harry how he feels about regulation.
They've squeezed. Well, wait a second. Let me make my point. I don't know where you're going with that. They've squeezed the population of the most powerful, wealthiest country in the world to the point where most people can't afford to pay rent.
Yeah.
Okay. So economic power isn't really economic power anymore. It's not really real power. There's more power in attention than there is in money. So there's always going to end up being checks and balances. Does that make sense?
Are there? Because Harry, how do you feel about governmental authority taking place in your life? Do you feel like the government should have any authority over you, or should you be allowed to do whatever you want to do?
I want to give you a piece of history.
Sure, go ahead.
1888, J.P. Morgan and the railroad barons, this country was in depression.
Yeah.
And J.P. Morgan gave the United States the money to get out of the depression.
Sure.
One man had more money than the whole country. And what happened to take off from there, the corporations grew. And the robber barons kind of enslaved the masses of the people. Now that's history.
And Teddy Roosevelt tried to fight it, but it didn't work out because he got halfway there, and then Taft fucking took the vote back from him when he sat there and he left office, and he ran on the Bull Moose Party, and he just ended up splitting the vote.
No, that's the history of the United States. So are we going to repeat it again? Could be.
But let me ask you personally, how much do you think the government should be allowed to tell you what to do?
I don't want the government to tell me a goddamn thing what to do.
That's Elon Musk. That's Elon Musk, and that's why he's allowed to control Starlink and create systems in which he can control entire fucking wars, is because he as an individual shouldn't be allowed to be told by the government what to do. This is where the conversation turns into Shades of Prey. This is where
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's all.
Okay, I kind of feel like whatever system you end up in, there's always going to be... So Elon Musk is definitely suffering and under attack for what it seems like a large population of our country, perhaps the world, sees as antisocial behavior. There's always a price to pay for exercising your freedom to such an extent.
Freedom isn't free. I gotcha.
So, I mean, yes, he can do the thing, whether or not he did do the hypothetical that we just
or whether or not
I don't feel like
I gotcha.
It's a hypothetical. So, and there's a lot of nuance to that I don't want to get into. I want to stay on the 30,000 foot level. Let's look at the big picture.
Should he be allowed to have that power?
So exactly. So let's say he did that as a hypothetical. There's always going to be a balance of power because you get tremendous amount. If people think you're going too far, like with Mr. Gates saying that he was going to blow up a rocket full of dust to hinder the light from the sun coming onto Earth to prevent global warming. I mean, he had such pushback against that it never came to fruition. Now, he's still invested in the company, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. People lost their shit. So, there's always going to be a balance of power. So, I mean, if you end up in a situation where we do have a one world government, you have 100,000 people controlling 8 billion, or are they controlling it? It's like in V for Vendetta, people should not be scared of their government. Their government should be scared of the people. If 8 billion people rise up, the only thing that keeps people from doing that, just like in slavery in America, there is no cohesion. And it's like you said, divide and conquer. That's the name of the game. But when it gets a little too outrageous, when it gets a little too fucked up, people generally are like, nope, that's enough. And they do band together. Look at the riots that we had during the pandemic. Now, do you think that was just because of George Floyd? Or do you think that there was a broader message to the riots where every fucking major city in the civilized West were having riots at exactly the same time? And what was their chant? We can't breathe. We can't, and they're all wearing masks, and it's during the pandemic. I mean, that's telling to me.
But I agree with you, but that's my point, is that it's a situation where this is the question of the one world government, because the whole thing is that is it a government by the people? Is it a government by the companies? Is it one of those things where they're telling us what we want, or we're deciding what we want? And I think both are equally dangerous because people are fickle. I mean, as much as you sit there and
I'll agree with you that anything top down is dangerous, but the way that change is created, generally speaking, is top down. And then after that change is enacted, there's a huge
I'm going to disagree with you.
A huge battle that happens where there's a rebalancing of power.
No, I think that it comes from bottom up. I think it comes from a question that can't be answered. I think it comes from people, like if you look at any revolution, it comes from a failure at the top. They run everything top down, and the top down model fails. And the bottom up model is what unearths everything.
Well, that's what I was saying. The bottom up comes in.
The people who are going to decapitate him.
The bottom up comes in after a top down mandate. So what I'm saying is the bottom up never happens a priori. That's never like the thing that creates great change in civilization.
Sure.
It's always a top down mandate that creates great change, and then the rebalancing of power comes from the uprising of the bottom up. That it reconstitutes, nope, we have checks, we have balances, we have power too because we outnumber you, and then generally speaking, after some sort of conflict, everything reaches its median state once again. But change is never enacted from the bottom up. Change is never enacted from the bottom up. Change is always enacted from the top down.
But if you're going to take that as writ, then it's a situation where it's the failure of the top down that causes the bottom up change, which I'm willing to agree to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
The failure of the top down. We're at the failure of the top down.
Yes, I agree. Do you agree? We are at the failure of the top down. We are ready for revolution.
We're ready.
Dude, I think that this is why we have populist uprisings. This is why we have the riots. This is why people are believing in Trump like a fucking religious figure. Because the only thing he has going for him is that he's not in the establishment, that we all can see is a gelled in thing that's a generational transfer of power, and he's not in that.
Weird because he's at the center of that.
He has been. He's not within their specific system. So we see him, as an outsider, and that's why people have religious fervor for him. So we're right there. We're on the cusp of the top-down failure about to show itself in the face of a bottom-up uprising.
See, and that's why the globalism thing is like such a strange question to me, is because it depends on who's in charge of it. Because if they sit there and they put those 8 billion people, those 9 billion people, whatever we're up to at this point, into the same category, you're going to end up, especially in other countries, because as much as the wealth disparity in our country is fucked up, it's like, look at some place like India, look at some place like China, Indonesia. It's like they've got fractions of % of people in those political climates who hold all the money and all the power. You unite those people with 7 billion people who are, as ridiculous as it sounds, like, oh, well, we're 90% of the people instead of 99% of the people who hold the power. It's like, shit's going to go south.
So what you're saying, broadly speaking, checks and balances,
sure.
Pros and cons, you are not for a one world government.
Oh, I'm for a one world government if it's by the people and for the people. If it's by the
you're never going to get that.
No, but what I'm saying is it's
the people are weak. They're not united. They're too easy to divide.
I don't think the corporations are going to be able to create that one world government, because the more of those people you unite under one banner, the more fucked things are going to get. Unless you can bring racism and xenophobia into it harder. It's so like, what you're saying. If you make me the same national status as a Chinese person who's enslaved to Apple with a suicide net below their like fucking workstation,
right,
I'm going to sympathize with that person instead of thinking they're a backwards commie.
Okay, so here's
it's
where
like,
I
as
see.
Soon as we're all the same people, they're fucked.
So here's where I see things going. I see things going exactly what you just said. So there's a back and forth. Like during the pandemic, we had mandates, and then the people rebelled, and then we had more mandates, and then the people rebelled. You know, we had the riots, then we had the trucker convoy in Canada, then we had one that started in the US. I guess it fizzled out, or the media stopped covering it. Something happened. So I'm seeing this as a back and forth. So this was kind of, I don't want to get too spooky here or anything, but it was a conversation that I had with people that may or may not be in my imagination. And what they said, because I was picturing it kind of like a Chinese finger trap. Just so much tension on one side, it pulls things in one direction.
That's
too much tension on the other. Fuck off. Too much tension on the other side, it pulls it in the other direction. And I was like, it's just going to keep going back and forth, but it can't separate because they're hinged. You know, the haves and the have-nots are dependent upon each other for certain things. And the communication that I got back from my good friend, who obviously is a human being that I was talking to on the telephone, was it is not a Chinese finger trap. It's a pendulum. And what's going to happen is systems are about to be put in place that make that swing back and forth so quick, it turns into a new vibration. It will be a seamless transition from one to the other.
New vibrations. Sorry.
What do you think? So before I ask you, what do you think of that? I have a few things I wanted. We're getting towards the end here, and we're not going to do an Alex Jones thing. I think having you hanging, where you are, it's not really going to work. So we do have like 20 more minutes or so that we can bullshit. But I mean, what do you think? What do you guys think of that vision, where the back and forth between the haves, the have-nots, those in power and those without, the checks and balances, the new pools of power being created through different dynamics like we have now through attention rather than economics and warfare, information. You're always going to have those power dynamics at play with each other, and people generally will even themselves out to the point where everybody's content, where it's compromise. Nobody's happy with the deal, but that's good enough. And then they let it rest until the next dynamic shift occurs, and then you have to rebalance the power again. That can happen with or without world government, is my point. And even with a world government, it would happen. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's fine. Can I speak first? And then I would immediately like to hear what Harry has to say.
Yeah, go for it.
So,
And by the way, I could not hear anything Harry said when I went to pee. So I was trying to build up the conversation. I forgot that he's not on my headset. So I was trying to build up that conversation through context of what you were saying while I was away. So maybe you want to clue me in a little bit with your little diatribe here.
well, so my thing is that I feel like here's where everything gets weird, is that Harry doesn't want the government to intervene with him.
Mhm.
And I understand that. Everybody wants their freedom. Everybody
Sure.
wants to be their own person.
So do I.
If you
So
gave
do
Harry
you.
the most money in the world,
Well,
Out
we
of
do
every
have Superman #1 coming soon.
that's not the
so-
most money. But
Oh, wait. Should I be quiet? Okay.
No, let's talk about Superman.
Good.
Let's talk about Superman.
No, hang on. Sorry, talking. That's the second time I did that. Talking head wants to make a point. Good.
but that's the thing that is the interesting thing to me, is that when it's somebody in charge of their own life, then yes, they should have all the freedom. As that person gets more and more power and they start being able to affect entire nations, then at some point we have to be able to vote on yes or no. Like, if Harry wants to sit there and turn your guy's house into a missile silo and create a nuclear weapon, if he's got the money,
I'm
to
all
do
for that, by the way.
we should be able to, but somebody should be able to tell him, no, you can't do that.
Unless it's a good thing.
But as his life stands right now, nobody should be able to tell him he can't do something, because his life isn't in that state where he can do something devastating to so many people.
Well, I
And
think that
that's what
the
people have
philosophy.
governance for.
I'm sorry. Say that sentence again. I talked
That's
over you.
something
You didn't
that
stop.
we don't have for systems of governance for.
So I think the theory of capitalism is that if you are you have enough wherewithal and you have enough power and you have enough jurisprudence and you have enough access, whatever power you build up for yourself, you are kind of a priori seen to have the right to use to a certain extent,
Which is
because you
wrong.
have enough know-how and ingenuity in order to gain it in the first place. And I agree with you. I think that the ability to gain power does not necessarily translate well into the ability to use that power. And you can look at let's look at kings of the past. There were excellent warriors, right?
Yes.
That destroyed other
Right.
civilizations in order to gain
Genghis
power.
Khan.
And then when they got to the point where they simply had to rest on their thrones and govern the state,
They
hey,
didn't have the ability.
they weren't any good at that. They were good at conquering, but they weren't any good at
They
governing.
found out they were more of a slave than the people they enslaved, because now they're responsible for them
Yeah,
to keep their power
exactly.
and to keep their position.
So the ability to acquire power does not necessarily translate into the ability to use it
govern,
well. Because generally speaking, acquiring power takes a very short-sighted view of things. It's a wonderful thing, and it's a wonderful masculine trait. The acquisition of power. I have no problem with that. I think it's an instinct that we have as men and as primates that can be used. I'm sorry?
I said that's sexist, also speciesist, but go on.
True. That can be used to great advantage, but it does not necessarily translate into the ability to effectively govern the power that you have acquired. And the human species is full of examples of that. Look at atomic bombs. We are on the verge of nuclear war. Now, we have proven that as a species, we have the ability to acquire this power because we have it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we have the ability to govern that power. We're fucking up big time now.
So let me agree with you on a very specific way. So here's one of the most interesting, for me, sociological takeaways from World War II. is that as like if you sit there and you look at it, so there were two great atrocities that were greater than all others that happened in World War II. One was the Holocaust, and one was the two atomic bombs that were dropped on Japan. Think about the difference between how we treat those two things. Oh, you very medievally killed, like genocided a people. That's terrible. We very technologically genocided a people. That's fine.
Well, let me say right off the bat,
we're going to stop being dicks.
Let me say right off the bat that there was a cry that went out across the world that Truman did exactly the wrong thing with deploying that technology. I think living in America, being raised in America, and going through the American educational system, you and I were given a very different perspective on that. And it is pretty much a matter of historical record that is consensus at this point, that it was obvious that Japan was going to back down. We deployed those bombs in order to create a world power out of ourselves because we wanted to show our one-upsmanship over Russia, which we felt, and we should have felt very threatened by Russia, but we felt very threatened by Russia, and we wanted to show them that we had something they did not have in order to imbalance power in our direction.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
It's definitely fucked up. Now, let me show you guys something here. This is interesting to me. I'm going to bring up a little link here. Now, everybody always says, hey, you're talking about all the things that are wrong in the world. Do you have an option? So here's an option that I think is interesting. We're going to take a quick break. I have to pee again. I realized I can't hear everybody on my headset. So we're going to take a quick break.
Are we going to talk about Jesus? I feel like we should talk about Jesus.
We're definitely, dude, with Joanne lately, I am so sick of Jeebus.
She doesn't even believe in Jeebus. She's like into this weird like Jewish Jeebus thing, which is like cute.
It's not the real Catholic white Jesus. It's the Jewish Jesus. That's not the real Jesus.
She's got like Jesus. She's got like yarmulke Jesus. It's weird.
I'm like, so I want. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying, like, dude, like Jesus was a Jewish person. Like, that's the silly thing. Like, I don't get why she thinks what she's espousing is different than anything. But anyway.
Okay. Well, in any case, I want to show you guys a little video, something called the Venus Project, but I gotta pee. I will be right back. We'll cut.
Butt fuck! Sorry.
And we're back. So anybody who is familiar with the documentary that came out right after 9/11, which was called The Zeitgeist, they'll be familiar. If you watched it all the way to the end, you'll be familiar with what is termed the Venus Project. Now, this is, I forget the guy's name. He has a very French-sounding name, if I remember correctly. I keep wanting to say Jacques Vallée, but I know that's not accurate. That's a guy who's really into ufology. I just watched an interview with him recently.
I
don't know. Will you shut the fuck up? So the documentary starts out talking about how we're all the same. We all have the same religion. It goes into religion. So, hey, you all have the same fucking stories. You just have different characters. And then it goes into the economy, and it talks about the Fed, how money is basically debt. It's not wealth. And all the money that the government has that it distributes is based upon debt, not wealth, which is, Harry, a lot of what you talk about, where they're using us kind of like as chattel in a corporation. Each of us has about $1 million value, which gives them the ability to
create money
because they can pull out loans against our perceived value. So that's really the way that system operates. And then it goes into something called the Venus Project, which is, everybody always says, hey, you're against this, you're against that, you're against this. What are you for? What's the alternative? Well, I'm not saying this is what I believe in. I'm not saying this is what I'm for, but it's interesting. So let's take a look at some of this video. and I might skip around a little bit. I tried to briefly find a good starting point, and if you guys, anybody chimes in, I'll pause the video and I'll try to skip around as much as I can. The Venus Project is basically from a social strategy, a social engineering strategy that says we have the resources, that everybody can have everything that they want. Money
resource-based economy.
Money is an illusion, so let's just give everybody the ability to have whatever they want whenever they want it. You don't have to own it, but you can use it. There's enough there for everybody. And if so many people want to take out golf clubs at the same time that we run out of golf clubs, we'll manufacture more golf clubs. No problem. You know, so it's definitely going to balance itself out over time, but it's a resource-based economy. Exactly right, talking head. So let's watch a little bit of this.
You socialist pig. So I literally can't hear this, but...
You can't hear this at all?
No.
Yeah, this is going, like, through my headphones. You can hear it, right?
No, I don't hear anything.
Oh, he doesn't hear anything either. So it's going through my headphones instead of the television. Is there a way to correct that real quick?
Give me 1 second.
That sucks. I should have played a video when we were doing our scene tests.
Yeah, we probably should have did.
All right, let's see if the audio works well here.
Okay.
Eliminate greed and selfishness and a lot of crime and a lot of aberrant behavior.
A social system can be designed so that all can live fully and constructively if the powers of science and technology are directed toward human and environmental concern and overcoming the artificial scarcities of our debt-based monetary systems. All people, regardless of political philosophy, social customs, or religious differences, ultimately depend upon the same resources: clean air and water, arable land,
Access to Jesus,
care, and relevant education.
Relevant education is key.
If you pledge allegiance to the earth
There's the guy.
and everyone on it, that'd be the way to go for the future.
The human species is a single family, and the world is home to everyone. Neither nations nor people can coexist separately any longer.
Let me see if I can find something where he actually talks about what his cities look like and everything. And
yeah, he's gonna like build like styrofoam boxes for humans.
Why would I?
It's very sexless. That's for sure.
I like to do things myself. I can't trust anything.
This is actually a pretty funny commercial. That's pretty funny. I'm glad that stayed on. This one, not so much. Not so much.
That's Jodie Foster. She's an Academy Award winner.
Yeah, whatever. She's old.
She's a great actress.
A scientific government doesn't mean that scientists rule or control people. It means they have better
He's a man.
means
It's okay.
for building transportation systems, better means for cleaning the air. They have the best means for restoring the ocean that we know of to this day.
Man, Indiana Jones has seen some rough times.
Computers can serve the needs of everyone when Cybernation is ultimately integrated into all aspects of this new and dynamic culture. One can think of this as an electronic nervous system, extending into all areas of the social complex. Their function would be to coordinate a balance between production and distribution, assuring there are no shortages or overruns.
In this highly technical society, decisions are based on direct environmental, human, and industrial feedback. You can think of this as electrical sensors throughout the entire environment, from cities, factories, warehouses, distribution centers, transportation networks, all over the globe, gathering data for more appropriate decisions. The decisions are based on the needs of society rather than corporate or private interests.
All right, let's stop right there. That's the main point.
Not
That's the main point. So let's stop right there.
So who's going to fund this?
Well, that's that's the question that he says is not a real question, because the question shouldn't be, do we have the money? The question should be, do we have the resources? The answer to the second question is yes, money is fictitious. We made it up. We are not the playthings of the gods. The gods are our playthings. Money is something that we created as an idea in order to facilitate value and the barter thereof. His point is that is an outmoded system. Now the real question is, in order to do this, do we have the resources? And one of the most important questions that I'll bring up in lieu of this kind of vision of what the future could be is what the World Economic Forum said. You will own nothing and you will be happy. That's kind of the world that this gentleman's envisioning, and I think it's interesting.
So I'm on the side of a more equitable distribution of resources, but my
I hate
point
that word.
is that so why do you hate that word?
Equitable? I just don't like the way it's used. Go ahead. I was just fucking with you. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just saying, but think about why that's being done is because equity is a thing that we don't want people to like. We want people to feel like it's dirty.
Nope, that's not why I don't like it. Go ahead. I didn't mean to derail you.
Oh, are you sure that's not why you don't like it?
Positive. Go ahead with your point. I didn't mean to derail you.
Oh no, you're fine. It's cheerfully withdrawn then.
Don't have to. Just continue with your point.
Oh, but it doesn't matter if things are equitable because that's a dirty word. So let's just move on.
All right, we'll move on. Anyway, we wanted to talk about the Roger Rabbit thing. So you sent me a link to.
Oh, that would make things far too equitable. That's a dirty word.
All right. Hey, everybody, thank you for watching the New World Order broadcast.
Come on, I'm fucking around with you.
And just remember, we're watching you too.
Someone is watching. There are strangers.